Welcome back to SwitchStars and to another indie game review, where this time we're going to be taking a look at Shadowblade Knight Symphony, which, according to the publisher VRCFORGE Studios, is a heart-pounding skill-based adventure which pushes the boundaries of human agility and combat prowess. However, going by the list of games, the capitalised company name, and the fact that the one and only employee is one Standu Grigor of Romanian nationality, I can almost guarantee that this is another Midnight Works in disguise, and I'd better pen to a pinch of shit that this is going to be a big sweaty bollock of a game. But let's take a look, shall we? So, no idea what the title of this one is about. I presume they were trying to be quirky or sound cool or something, but unlike Castlevania Symphony of the Night, the symphony part just doesn't really work here. As per usual though, the trailer for the game features predominantly cinematic footage, and despite it including gameplay, it's clear that from the speed at which they're manipulating the camera, that this one was captured in the PC version before it was exported to Switch. Anyway, this is the main menu, a still image of a generic dark tower surrounded by lava, the usual sound settings, and a tutorial menu which consists of the exact same controller diagram that I've seen in countless Midnight Works games. Heading into the game though, the first couple of levels act like tutorials, teaching us how to slide, jump and kick the shit out of a knockoff Murloc using our Mark 1 boot, which is our primary weapon to start with, and is about as much use as tits on a goldfish, as we've got a pathetic right foot and it takes 3 kicks to kill what is the weakest enemy in the game. In the second tutorial level, we learn how to use our grapple, but not before we're stabbed to death by another Murloc, but this thing not only acts like a hook shot, enabling us to latch onto glowing rings and pull ourselves towards them, but can also be used to pull enemies towards us, like Scorpion out of Mortal Kombat. From what I can tell though, this thing deals no damage unless you're an explosive barrel, that is, but after ascending the tower, we come into contact with our second enemy, some eyeball toting thing with bladed arms, and you'll notice that the game loves to give us a cinematic view of the upcoming enemies, and it takes every opportunity to do so. After booting the fuck out of all One Eye though, I inadvertently volleyed him off the edge of a ledge and presumed he'd fallen to his doom into the lava. But after much confusion as to why I couldn't hookshot across to this shielded ring, I discovered that he'd actually survived the fall and was minging about at the bottom of the tower. Anyway, after finishing him off, I headed upwards, learned that I could wall jump, and got a taste of my first weaponry, a glowing green sword. This thing turned out to be only marginally more powerful than the boot, but after hopping across a jump pad, I learned that I could also throw my sword, sticking it into the forehead of a Murloc before being zapped by an eyeball thing again and dying. Returning and finishing him off though, I then proceeded through the portal to level 3. Now here I instantly spied a giant dragon and knew that I was in for a bit of a shitfest, but spoiler alert, this was the first real level and last level that I played in the game, and I'll show you why in a quickfire roundup of events. So here's how it went. Now you may have noticed that I no longer have my weapon, and I don't know if every level starts you off with no weapon, but this one most certainly did, and then proceeded to pit me against some shielded spear wielding bastards that I somehow managed to take down with a 1-2 combo of boots before failing at a wall jump and returning to the start of the level. After succeeding the jumps, I then snagged a weapon, took out a couple of enemies and proceeded along a walkway where I met another couple of jumps, one of which was far too far for me to make, but I discovered that after throwing your sword you can then click to pick it up again, which will launch you forward, and thought great, I can use this to cross the gap. However, taking aim, I proceeded to launch my sword across the level where it fell into the abyss, never to be seen again. The following 5 minutes was then spent attempting to breach the gap, and I eventually discovered that performing a slide jump gave me more distance, after which I was able to hookshot up to the upper level. Here I encountered more enemies, which after a few mistimed attacks managed to kill me, and herein I discovered a problem, and possibly the biggest glaring fault with the game, which completely destroys its entire playability. You see, when you die, you're teleported to your most recent checkpoint, weapon in hand. However, whilst you're holding a weapon, you can't actually use your grapple, and so you need to drop it, but then you're left without a weapon to fight the enemies that you encounter. Now luckily I was able to throw my weapon and have it sticking to a wall near the jump pad leading up to the second floor, where I was able to retrieve it and take down these nasties. However, I then needed to drop my weapon again to make my way up to the next level and perform a bit of parkour. After jumping across some arches and hitting another jump pad, I was then introduced to the game's ranged weapon, a bow and arrows. But after firing just a couple of shots, I was set upon by 3 murlocs and was killed and teleported, bow in hand, back to the floor below. This then left me with a dilemma, of course, of how to get back up there with a weapon, but I figured I could use my previous tactic of tossing the weapon up to the next floor to get out of it. Unfortunately for me, the bow and arrow didn't fly half as well as the swords do and flew off at an angle, once more falling into the abyss. I aimed way too low with a sword, having it stick into a wall where I couldn't retrieve it, and the second sword I found fucked off into oblivion, taking both my hopes and dreams with it. Ever the optimist though, I decided to push on, and after some cheeky little hook shots to pull each individual murloc to me, finish them off with a boot, I was able to proceed up a wooden bridge to the next area, but it was here that I discovered that my luck had finally run out. Or as we say in Old Blighty, I was shit out of luck. This final area featured a bunch of familiar faces and a big old golem bastard, and figuring I'd take the tactical approach, I decided to try and kick an explosive barrel onto it. But as my boot made contact with the barrel, it of course blew me the fuck up. So I was able to kick down some of the smaller enemies, but the golem was having none of it, smashing me into the ground. But as it stoved my head in repeatedly, I noticed a red mark on its back, which I presumed was where I needed to hit it with my now non-existent bow. Basically, I was fucked at this point, and after attempting to jump around the barrier to skip the fight, I failed miserably due to some invisible barriers and enemies that clipped through the walls and slaughtered me. After this, I quit out to the main menu though and selected continue, just to see if it would load me back up the last checkpoint and reset the weapons, but lo and behold, it didn't. It just started me over from the beginning of the stage, at which point I quit out again, for good. So although I didn't make it past the first real level of the game, I feel like it gave me a solid impression of how the rest of them were likely to play out, and there was no way that I was battling my way through that kind of shit when after 40 minutes I'd barely even made it through the tutorial. Once again, this seems like a solid case of throwing something together in a week and having done with it, and as with many other games like this, it had the potential to actually be pretty decent if only the developers had bothered their asses to playtest the thing and iron out the issues. But alas, they didn't, and so what we're left with is a half game which is far more frustrating to play than it is fun. I swear though, that if they just took the time to polish things up, they could actually make something worthy of being called a game, but I'll plat smoke if that ever happens. Until then though, this has been a semi-review or more of a first glance at what Shadowblade Knight Symphony has to offer, and if you want to see past the third level, I guess you're just going to have to take the plunge and play it yourself. For now though, let me know your thoughts and opinions on the game down in the comments section below. Drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more Nintendo Switch reviews and content, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.